Games have evolved so much over the years, they've helped so many people, but something is growing silently, but no one knows its name, but I'll tell you it. Greed. And with it comes the damages it leaves behind, the lack of quality, creativity, customization, and content, and many other things in the game that you play. Customization, we all love it, but have you ever noticed it's becoming less incentivized to unlock it, but rather buy the item that you want? With the additions of battle passes and loot boxes are kind of phasing out unless you're playing a mobile game. Paid skins are becoming more prevalent. They're not a new thing, but they definitely weren't a thing that was pushed back in the older games, going as far as like 2012. But they also used to be a lot cheaper than what they are now. These types of changes didn't happen overnight. It was a very slow thing that happened. As to where we are now, where you need to play a game for X amount of time, which in turn means you get your item by grinding out the battle pass. Your item isn't unique. Any other way, everyone has the chance to get that item, and most likely a lot of people do have that item. But grinding out a battle pass isn't really a way of your game being good. It's just people are more likely to complete stuff if they bought it. Things that used to be the standards in some games have now become the paid option now. A prime and sad example would be Halo Infinite with its $60 price tag for just the campaign and the free download for multiplayer. What was the reason behind this ass-backwards decision?
I don't know, man. Seems kinda gay to me.
And it kind of murdered the game in a sense. Making the game like this split the players because people mainly play for multiplayer after the campaign is done. Yeah, the campaign is a staple of many games that are like $60, but to sit there and split it up and make people pay $60 is kind of retarded. But they chose this and made multiplayer free and the campaign $60, not $30, which would have been at a perfect price for the exchange you make, because in a sense, half of the game is multiplayer. Why I think they tried to do this was to essentially get more money. And the ways they did this was keeping basic cosmetics behind a paywall, the color blue behind a paywall, removing customization options, not having any sort of default armor to buy. Well, not buy, but that was unlocked to where you could customize your Spartan. People complain about Halo 5's customization, but I would say that Infinite's is far worse. Now the loot boxes in that game, or the rec packs, that's a different fucking story. Now the game's been like this only until fairly recently, where they've only just given us colors to actually use for the Spartan, but they haven't given any armor pieces yet. But along with that, you have the battle pass progression, which was insanely throttled. You can barely level up in that thing unless you do challenges, which in a sense would kind of make people want to spend money in order to progress in the fucking battle pass. Now the game is pretty dead. I mean, it doesn't have that many players on it. It's doing worse than MCC, which is kind of as wild because MCC is a pretty old game by now. But you see how if you try to sit there and nickel and dime everyone, the cost of what happens is reputation. Something that's overlooked, but not at the same time, oddly enough. People hate COD, but this game still makes millions upon close to billions sometimes per year, but they keep taking 1 foot forward and 2 steps back. Anytime you think about Call of Duty, you're like, oh, they did this cool thing, and then they end up fucking it up somehow in their next title, or the title that they release after that. It's really just like an abusive relationship. You hate it, but you can't get enough of it at the same time. I'm guilty of this too. I play COD, but I hate the series as well, so kind of. But eventually you have enough of it and you just stop playing the game. Or the series just ends up killing itself for you. This is what happened to Gears of War. It's pretty much a dead series at this point now. Formerly a top tier for Xbox 360 and well known, and now merely a methed up drug fiend of its former self. There are more games like this, but I won't really get into those. The reason that Gears of War was so good anyways is because the gameplay was always good. It just didn't really stray too far of what it was before, but it also improved in certain ways, and that was why Gears of War was a really good series to begin with. It really didn't force you to buy anything, really. This all changed with Gears of War Judgment. After that, the series just fell off. Like, there's no dispute. Until it eventually sold itself to Microsoft, which in turn changed the game as a whole, and overall it just descended into pure shit. It was no longer good. Now, gaming as a whole has changed in terms of creativity. This can be both in a bad and good way, but more of a bad way. So, D1 had a feel to it. Playing the beta or the alpha back whenever it was releasing in 2014 was awesome. It felt like it was its own sort of thing. It didn't really have a counterpart to it at the time. Nothing felt like Destiny. With each new expansion, you knew what it was as soon as you saw it. And it really wasn't pushing too far away from the original designs of the base game. It still felt like it was a part of that universe, and it still felt very Destiny-like, if you want to call it that. The armor, the weapons, all of those were really cool in Destiny 1. Quite literally all of them. There was probably a couple, maybe a handful of bad sets, but all of them were good. Now, fast forward to D2, with the removal of basically all guns and previous armor types from the old game, which in reality doesn't make any sense for them to do that. They should have just kept them. Maybe reduced their rarity to like blue, but even then, it didn't make any sense for them to do that, as well as removing exotics out of the game. So during the beginning stages of the game, in order to get some cool shaders, you had to buy them, and it was a one-time use sort of thing, which was ridiculous, and there was no other way to get back those shaders until fairly recently. Well, recently by I mean like a year ago or whatever, which was something that was completely different than Destiny 1's version. But the good addition was you could individually change pieces of armors with shaders. Now, the armor and the weapons in Destiny 2 were, in my opinion, fairly ugly. Some armor sets were really cool, but it was more ugly than anything else. The exotics were lackluster. And with that came the thing of seasons. Seasons were something that were not really a good thing. It was a hit or miss sort of thing. They're kind of the same as the first two DLCs from Destiny 1, but $10. With these came the inclusion of previous exotics and sometimes legendaries. Now, if you really think about it, that is the dumbest fucking thing for them to do. Not in a sense of money, because they played off of people's nostalgia, but it was really stupid because it just promotes laziness for them to just use old assets that should have been in the game in the first place. And in most cases, this is done wrong. Some cases it's done right. But in Destiny's way, it wasn't right for them to do that. To sit there and basically make all those exotics come back and only use nostalgia factor, for the simple fact that a lot of people liked those weapons. They instead do these little baby battle passes behind them, so you would have 100 tiers, and it was boring. It didn't add anything to the game, and Destiny just lacked that creativity that it once had. The beginning of D2 was okay, and then it got pretty good, and then it just completely fell off from there. They should have just had faith behind their product and had everything from the previous game in. Not all of it, if they really wanted to, but then they tried to put stuff behind paywalls, and I think that this has really fucked with the Destiny 2 reputation. Now, some of these games are good. Some of them I wouldn't really recommend at all. I wouldn't recommend Destiny 2 anymore. If you would have asked me like a year ago or something like that, I'd probably say, yeah, give it a try, but now it's just no point. Gears, I would say don't even fucking touch it. COD, I wouldn't really recommend that either, even though I play it myself. But I don't think that their monetization preference is a good one for what they are providing as games. Their prices do not make sense for what they could actually provide if they actually had faith in their team and their products, which it kind of seems like they don't have faith in what they release. But I'm not a game developer or a businessman, so I don't fucking know. This is just how I see it. And yeah, I know. They gotta make their money. That's fine. I don't give a shit, really. But if they continue to do this, or if they make really drastic changes to the way that they monetize their games will either slowly die or fall really fast, like Halo Infinite and Gears of War. What I hope you got out of this video was to be a little bit more cautious on what you actually buy in these games. Now, you could literally just take my 2 cents and throw them in a fucking pond, but these are really just my opinions on the whole gaming sphere as a whole in this one aspect. So, have any questions or whatever, leave them down in the comment section. So, yeah, thanks for watching.